Right, so Keir Starmer's Muslim voter problems. As some of you will know, he's currently polling Muslim voters just to see how big of a problem he's made for himself in regards to backing genocide in Gaza. His denial of ever doing that, despite it being caught on film, his subsequent failure to apologise for that, and of course his support for everything Israel has done ever since, right up to supporting the decision by the government to cut off financial and humanitarian aid to UNRWA. Starmer, as we know, needs to have his hand held before he makes a decision on anything, be it from Peter Mandelson or a focus group or one of those expensive consultancies he relies on. In case you wondered why Labour seems so desperate for money all of the time, and the problem with that is you have no concept of whether the advice you're being given is good or bad. And as far as Muslim voters go, and I covered a lot of the reasons behind Muslim voters deserting Labour in a video just yesterday, but the consequences of that, deciding to take Muslim voters for granted, deciding that Labour can afford to lose some of its voters by continuing to lead the party against their interests, doing things that they find grossly offensive, well, I expected Starmer's poll when it finally comes out, if it comes out into the public realm, if it's really bad, it probably won't, would show things are bad, but actually things are terminal, because Muslim voters are now organising for themselves and giving up on mainstream entirely. And I'd argue we'd all do well to do just the same. Right, so Starmer's poll will undoubtedly show things are very bad for Labour amongst Muslim voters, whether they choose to tell us or not, a base they've long taken for granted. It's not just Labour that turns Muslim voters off, of course, so do the Tories. It was only a fortnight ago that Cameron, Sunak and James stupidly attended a Conservative Friends of Israel dinner. You don't ever hear so much about the Tory version of LFI, do you? But it's there and present. Along with them at said dinner was the UK ambassador to Israel, who said the two-state solution was dead, Zippy Hotovely. She should have been expelled from the country after that. Instead, she's still able to hobnob with the Prime Minister himself, along with the respective Foreign and Home Secretaries. There are 30,000 people dead at the hands of Zionism in Gaza, and neither Sunak nor Starmer bat an eyelid at it. And as much as I'm focusing on the Muslim voter response here, because of what is actually happening in that demographic, which I will come on to, they aren't the only ones grossly offended by the conduct of the government and the main opposition party walking in lockstep with them every step of the way with what is going on in Israel and in Gaza. The Starmer shadow cabinet are arguably even more devoted to Israel, and certainly devoted to funding from pro-Israeli sources than the Tories are. So changing government from Tories to Labour won't make the blindest bit of difference to anyone offended by what is happening in the Middle East, Muslim voter and non-Muslim voter alike. So what are the Muslim voters going to do about it then, Damo? Well, they've been busy organising as it happens. Not that the mainstream news are covering this at all. Whilst Labour sources are dismissive of lost Muslim voters, reportedly referring to losing a few of them as shaking off fleas, reinforcing the already demonstrated, as per the Ford report, knowledge that the party is riddled with Islamophobia, not taken as seriously as anti-Semitism, which appears to be the only form of racism in existence to Labour, or the only one they care about or that matters. Muslim voters have got together, have been mobilising, and have set up a whole new entity, which went public on the 19th of December last year, so is barely more than a month old, and it's called the Muslim Vote, or TMV. These guys mean business. They already have the endorsements of, for example, the Muslim Association of Britain, the Muslim Council of Scotland, the Muslim Council of Wales, Muslim Engagement and Development, MEND, Prevent Watch, and a lot more. Their mission statement reads, "This election signals a shift. Muslim issues at the forefront. We will no longer tolerate being taken for granted. We are a powerful, united force of 4 million acting in unison. We are focused on seats where the Muslim vote can influence the outcome. We're here for the long term. In 2024, we will lay the foundations for our community's political future." They can back this claim up too, it would seem, if you cast a cursory glance across their website, the muslimvote.co.uk. They're focused on seats where the Muslim vote can influence the outcome, and are looking at seats where basically more than 10% of the voting public identify as Muslim, which according to their website at the moment is 102 constituencies, although Scottish seats have not yet been added to that. Certainly enough to influence the outcome of an election at first look. Not all of those seats, of course, will be currently held by an MP who voted against the ceasefire or abstained on it, but it is very much what drove TMV into existence. That vote on the 15th of November last year, where 81% of MPs didn't back a ceasefire in Gaza. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. So in light of this knowledge, TMV proposed to apply themselves and their thousands of declared volunteers and campaign supporters in these constituencies. They're offering support to Muslims in other seats too in a whole host of different ways. They will be advising Muslims as to whether there is a party candidate who has voted for the ceasefire and is worth them supporting, or whether they need to select and put up an independent candidate between them to serve their needs and their area who actually will back such a thing. They will help people to do this from beginning to end with seasoned campaign organisers on hand to go through electoral data and offer training and political education. They'll help with the onerous work covering things like due diligence, selection panels, asking the right sort of questions of potential candidates. They're coordinating support between groups across the country via social media and WhatsApp. They've got volunteers on hand to help with all manner of aspects of campaigning, from website developers, graphic designers, campaign literature producers, thousands of volunteers prepared to go doorstepping or do phone banking, to social media promotion. They've got data crunchers to help with local polling. They have funding they can make available to various areas. Muslims funding the campaigns of Muslim candidates for Muslim interests. But for so long, they have been failed by mainstream parties and are fully covered legally with multiple legal organisations prepared to work pro bono to meet any snags that may arise. They've built all of this up in a couple of months. If that doesn't tell you how angry the Muslim population of Britain is right now, I really don't know what will. And Labour and Tory politicians alike should be shuddering over this. But Keir Starmer most of all, as TMV described his Labour Party as being 30,000 dead Gazans too late to suddenly pretend they care about Muslim voter interest now. And that TMV are not just here for the election, but they're here for the long term. Look at it this way in terms of Starmer's problems. He has this whacking great polling lead nationally, as we've seen various pollsters say. Going into an election year, it's clearly his to lose then. But by hemorrhaging the Muslim vote, he's well on his way there. And there is historical precedent for Labour losing the support of this demographic. Following the Iraq War, Labour lost vast swathes of its Muslim vote. Yet it had recovered enough of it by 2015 that they'd won 64% of the Muslim vote at that year's election. Under Jeremy Corbyn, that rose to 80%. So I look forward to seeing Starmer's poll just to see how much damage he's actually done. But there's polling we can look at right now, showing the vulnerability at least of even very safe Labour seats to a concerted, united Muslim vote being taken elsewhere. So let's look at two examples. First, let's look at Ilford North, which is the seat of Wes Streeting. Streeting is horrible. Streeting is pro-NHS privatisation, pro-Israel, and funded by those with links to both private health and the Israel lobby. He's everything wrong with the Labour Party, and his majority is only 5,000. Starmer's problem is that with his polling, he'd expect Streeting's majority to soar, with the Tories on their backsides in the national polls. But instead, we're having conversations about him potentially losing his seat instead, such as the power of the Muslim vote and the Muslim vote in his seat. An independent candidate has already been selected to stand against him, Liane Mohammed, a British Palestinian who is ardently pro-Palestine independence, pro-ceasefire, pro a fully funded nationalised NHS. Everything Streeting isn't. The Muslim population of Ilford North is a massive 31%, nearly 1 in 3. And you just can't picture them voting for Streeting when he keeps backing Israel like he has done. Equally, they'd be most inclined to not vote at all, however, if they didn't feel there was a candidate worth backing. So by standing Liane Mohammed, who has been told on the doorstep to get Streeting out, such has been the positive reception to her candidacy, the Streeting might be in real bother. 31% of Ilford North's voter base is equivalent on 2019 figures to 22,618 people. Streeting won his seat in 2019 by getting just 25,323 votes. Many of those will have been Muslim votes that he likely isn't going to get next time round. He is extremely beatable and pretty much would only need the Muslim vote to come out to do it, because many, many other people there are just as sick of him. Let's do another example. You might remember the massive protest running through Bethnal Green and Bow following the ceasefire vote, the incumbent MP Rushanara Ali also failing to back a ceasefire. Well, she has a gigantic majority, a majority of 37,524. But she also has the 6th highest Muslim population per constituency in the country at 40.1%. She might have secured 44,052 votes in 2019, but there are 35,355 Muslim votes based on those figures up for grabs on her patch, and she will have had a disproportionate number of them, which, should Muslims there get organised around human rights lawyer Tasneem Akunji, even a majority as large as hers isn't unbeatable. Akunji has said of Rushanara Ali's actions, "I am standing because the incumbent did not give a voice to her constituents. She's a puppet on a string for Starmer. The party system is now a force against democracy rather than a force for democracy." And he's absolutely right, of course. TMV reckon as many as 55 constituencies can have their seats change hands by virtue of the power of the Muslim vote that both major parties have pretty much lost. If you want to get involved with TMV, then go visit themuslimvote.co.uk and go from there. If you want further incentive, even as Labour are conducting this polling, according to The Guardian, Labour sources are saying as long as Labour remains more than 20 points ahead in the polls, nothing Muslim voters do will matter. Care to prove them wrong? Meanwhile, if you want a reminder of at least a good many of the times Starmer and co have screwed over the Muslim vote, explaining why Starmer has lost the Muslim vote and deserves nothing less, frankly, check out this video here. His is a party in damage limitation mode. But they deserve everything they get, in my view. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.